Hey everyone, Oddmondo here. I was going to do a review of The Odyssey, but I went to the wrong summer blockbuster starring Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jon Bernthal. Now I'm stuck doing a review for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Welcome to Not This Realm, where I talk about comic books, movies, TV, and action figures inspired by the realms of superheroes, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. It's been a while since I last made a video, and I thought what better way to come back than going on camera. And now that I see myself, all I can say is, sorry I'm not better looking. In all seriousness, I do want to let you know why I've been absent for so long. My editor, Ostrovixen, and I went through some very sudden and painful losses within the span of a year. Then I was in a collision, and not long after that, a loved one close to me was also in a collision. And we're both fine, by the way. Just dealing with that. And then I do have other responsibilities, work and family, as we all do. It did take a lot of emotional energy and passion away from me doing this channel. But I am going to come back to it. I'm not going to do videos as frequently as I used to. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I grew up reading the comics and watching the animated shows and playing the games. I remember the hype of the first movie and checking out SpiderManHype.com when it first came out. If you didn't know how old I am, that probably gives it away. Let me know in the comments if you remember checking out that site. I loved the first two movies like many of you, and feeling a little let down with the third movie. It felt like their heart just wasn't in it, and it felt like they didn't do the Venom story justice. The Amazing Spider-Man movies, I wasn't the biggest fan of those. And I didn't love the MCU Spider-Man movies starring Tom Holland. Nothing against Tom. I think those are really good movies. They just aren't very good Spider-Man movies. They forget what makes this character special to all of us. And I wasn't really a big fan of how they changed his rogues gallery to become Iron Man villains, and he was just sort of in the way. And then in the second movie, his relationship with MJ kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like they were just doing it to capitalize on the real-life relationship between Tom Holland and Zendaya. I think No Way Home was great for what it was, which is spectacle and fan service. Let's face it, it was pretty messy. It's really hard to rewatch because the plot's really uneven, and I didn't like a lot of the creative choices that they made. I remember talking about No Way Home with my friends, and they would defend it by saying, well, at the end, he ends up where we want him to be. And my rebuttal would be, well, that's the movie I wanted No Way Home to be, Spider-Man Back to Basics. Well, I'm happy to say that Spider-Man Brand New Day is that movie. Director Destin Daniel Cretton, who directed Shang-Chi and co-created and directed a few of the episodes of Wonder Man, does an excellent job of bringing Spider-Man back to basics, while at the same time integrating the best parts of the Raimi trilogy, The Amazing Spider-Man, and the recent games. He also gives us some of the best character moments, performances, visuals, and action sequences of the MCU Spider-Man movies. In fact, in just the first few minutes of the movie, he highlights many of these qualities. His life to being Spider-Man. Cretton, along with writers Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, give Tom Holland a lot of material to work with here, and from the physical to the emotional aspects, I think Tom Holland really nails it. The longing to be with his friends is so believable and heartbreaking, I couldn't help but cheer for him, which is something I want from a Spider-Man movie. I also love that Spider-Man was more quippy and expressive with his body language this time around. It's something that I feel was lacking in the previous MCU Spider-Man movies. But for me, it's his scenes with Zendaya's MJ and Sadie Sink's character that make Brand New Day worth watching. They're not just going through the motions like you've seen in recent lackluster entries in the genre. Their desires, feelings, and interactions with one another are what motivate their actions, like a chain reaction driving the plot forward. The best example I can think of this is MJ. Zendaya is given a lot more material to work with, and she delivers in her performance. Sadie Sink also steals a majority of the third act, but more on her later when I start talking about spoilers. The supporting cast does a great job of building the world of Brand New Day. Jacob Batalon's Ned is just as fun and endearing as you remember. Liza Colon-Zayas, best known from her role in The Bear, plays Detective Jean Wolfe. She has a significant role as one of Spider-Man's few allies in the movie. Mark Ruffalo gives some words of wisdom to Peter Parker as Bruce Banner, and then as the Hulk, probably gives one of the best action sequences in any of the MCU Spider-Man movies as he has a fight with the Punisher and Spider-Man. I knew we were getting back the Savage Hulk because of the trailers, but it was way more intense than I thought it would be. And then there's Jon Bernthal as the Punisher. He had a larger role than I expected, but he ended up being one of my favorite parts of the movie. I loved it whenever he was bickering with Spider-Man. It felt like they were siblings, but at the same time he was also true to his character. Well, at least I think so. I can see how some people may not like the direction they took with him in this movie. I get it. Many of the criticisms I have with this movie have to do with the creative decisions rather than anything dealing with the performances or the direction or the writing. First off, another MCU character makes a cameo in this movie. The execution didn't quite sit well with me, and I would argue that it was unnecessary and they could have found a way around that. I also have some thoughts on something Peter does that has some major implications for the future of the MCU. And I have some mixed feelings about Sadie Sink's character. She's a wonderful actress and she does a great job. I just don't know if this is how I wanted them to introduce this character. I also think Spider-Man Brand New Day would have benefited from having a few more scenes to answer a few lingering questions, like how does he pay for rent and have the tech in his house? Does he have a job, or does he go to school and take it from the laboratory? Does being Spider-Man get in the way of this? Or if Brand New Day wants to set itself further apart from Spider-Man 2, it could show that maybe he's already graduated from ESU and that he's gone on to be a substitute teacher like he has in the comics and even the video games. Does he work in the shadows or move in silence and dumpster dive like he did in that movie? I also think maybe show that there are people that don't like Spider-Man and what he does because they don't trust him. Maybe introduce a character like J. Jonah Jameson, but not necessarily him. I think adding those scenes would have elevated Spider-Man Brand New Day from being a great Spider-Man movie to being the undisputed best Spider-Man movie. One of my major non-spoiler criticisms of the movie has to do with its villains. It seems like Spider-Man keeps getting cucked when it comes to his rogues gallery. Scorpion and Tombstone make a brief appearance in the movie. That left me a little disappointed. I was hoping he would finally get his arch nemesis in Brand New Day, and I felt like that should have been Scorpion. But once we get into the spoilers, I'll throw out some ideas I have for that in the future. Alright, and now time for some spoilers to address some of my previous criticisms of the movie. So if you haven't seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, go ahead and pause it right here, go watch the movie, and come back. I'll be here waiting for you. Alright, so the MCU character that does make an appearance is Yelena from the New Avengers, done in a way that's more that cringy, awkward Marvel humor that many of us don't like. I felt like it could have been done better, maybe just showing her and Spider-Man at the Avengers Tower having a meeting. But it does give us a little Easter egg of one of the skins from the Spider-Man games where he's just wearing the mask and his underwear. I just feel like whatever she contributed to the story could have been worked around and done through someone else, maybe Ned or maybe Peter Parker finds a way on his own. On to my second criticism, Peter Parker makes an inhibitor device to suppress his mutation, which is why he goes to see Bruce Banner at ESU. He has a device that keeps him from turning into the Hulk, so he picks his brain a little bit to see what makes it work and what improvements he can make to benefit him. I feel like this is a little bit beyond Peter Parker's capabilities. He's smart, but this is something that's Reed Richards smart or Tony Stark smart, because something like this takes years of R&D and testing that I don't think Peter Parker has the time or resources to do. I feel like a better workaround would have been having him collaborate with Bruce Banner as Spider-Man, and then once they get to Jean Grey taking over Bruce Banner's body, and then after the big Hulk fight scene and they get Bruce Banner into custody or take him to the hospital, whatever it is that they do, the Department of Damage Control takes his device and reverse engineers it to become a universal inhibitor to use on Jean Grey. Or something like that. I just feel like it could have been done better. I want to go back and elaborate on my criticisms of how they underutilize Scorpion and how they can rectify that. In the end credits scene of Spider-Man Brand New Day, Ned's Spidey Tracker app shows us that Spider-Man is somewhere out in space. Now this could be Tom Spider-Man, one of the other two Spider-Man, or even Miles Morales. More than likely, I think it is Tom Spider-Man, and it's alluding to him making his next appearance in Avengers Secret Wars. Now, in the comics, Secret Wars is famous for being where he originally gets his black suit. Now, if that is the case, and Secret Wars is the beginning of the symbiote saga for Tom Spider-Man, that could eventually lead to Scorpion becoming his version of Venom. I think that would be the smart move and the most likely one, because I feel like Sony's already closed the book on Eddie Brock's version of Venom with Venom Save the Last Dance. But in order for that to work, they would need to start setting up Scorpion as Spider-Man's arch nemesis or one of his arch nemeses. I'm still holding out hope that we'll eventually get Hobgoblin somewhere down the line. And then there's the reveal of Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. I have some mixed feelings on this one. I don't know if this is how I wanted one of the major members of the X-Men being introduced into the MCU. I have this vision of her, like many of you probably do, and this doesn't really line up with it. I'm okay with the Spider-Man Brand New Day alluding to Jean Grey having some violent tendencies so that it ties into the Dark Phoenix saga later on. But here it seems a little too intense. I mean, she at least murks one person in this movie. And I'll be honest, I don't feel like Sadie Sink was the right person to play Jean Grey. I feel like maybe they should have got someone a little bit older, maybe someone like Margaret Qualley. Or maybe they chose the wrong character for this part. Maybe they could have gone with one of the Stepford Cuckoos, or one of my favorite fan theories is that she was going to be Hope Summers, and I feel like that would have been a more appropriate role for Sadie Sink. You could probably disagree with me on that. Let me know in the comments what you think. This is probably the most like Peter Parker and Spider-Man that Tom has ever been. Like I said, it's the struggles that Peter Parker goes through because of being Spider-Man that resonates with many of us. And then you have Destin Daniel Cretton's excellent direction that gives us everything we want from a Spider-Man movie, both physically and emotionally. As a result of that, we get some amazing performances from Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Sadie Sink. This is also the best looking Spider-Man movie in my opinion. It has depth and texture, something that I think wasn't present in the previous movies. They all felt pretty flat compared to this one. I don't really like giving scores, just really suggestions whether or not you should go see it in theaters, but if I had to give it a score, I would give it 4 Punisher grunts out of 5. And that was my review for Spider-Man Brand New Day. I'm Armando for Not of This Realm. This video was written by me and edited by the amazing Ostra Vixen. If you're interested in comics, movies, TV, and action figures inspired by the realms of superheroes, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, then please consider subscribing to us. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe and take care.